certainly means that they'll have a better mapping of how the dog has evolved from the wolf. And, there's a whole interspecies of wolf-dog hybrid of various places that don't seem to fit totally in wolf and totally in dog sections. So they have their wolf-dog sort of hybrid section as well. So they have lots of different variances in the creatures that they're looking at. So why the dog? I mean, how did this all come about? Why do we have a domesticated animal? And that's also part of this whole storytelling. So we have anthropologists, hello, anthropologists who are also involved in studying this, because the people, all the people's sort of like different rituals and lifestyles has a lot to do with why the dog was domesticated. So it's widely believed now that the dog was domesticated in various parts of the world during mostly the hunter-gatherer phase of the human or humanoid evolution. So each part of the continents have, their own sort of hunter-gatherer, phase, and then there's more agriculture comes through, and some are much stronger and earlier than other parts. But the deal is that usually this communication or this integrating of the wolf with the human, it happens during the hunter-gatherer phase of that particular culture or climate. So in other words, this is when the wolf entered the living spaces of humans. That's just the bottom line. So it's thought that the wolves appeared near humans only because the humans had scraps they threw. That's the primary thing that people think, scientists believe has started this whole relationship. One might consider the egalitarian social structure of wolves, where they see other creatures as being sort of equal, that might have drawn them to be close to humans as well. Maybe, opening the door for the possible quote-unquote miswired wolf to be a bit trusting of humans, or a little more trusting of humans. So that's another possibility, and that's hard to track, but that's sort of opens the door to that. There is evidence in some areas that the wolf or wolf dog was actually killed and eaten. So they were actually part of the hunting. They were hunted and eaten. And then when there were puppies that were orphaned, they would be raised in captivity, very likely beaten and given meat that the humans didn't want, like reindeer, and while the human hunters preferred like rats. So they were actually raised in captivity, and these captive wolves were often later sacrificed as sort of some ritual. So this was not the pleasant part of our, domestication, but it did happen. So there are other communities of humans that had a different relationship, thank God, of hunting helpmates, and coincidentally the shapes of the wolves' snouts and the array of teeth, i.e. there were more of them tightly packed, were more like that of a dog. So these dogs, these wolf dogs, were the first to be found in carefully ritualized burial grounds with their human counterparts. So now they're being revered in certain areas at certain times. So interestingly, just so you know, the change in shape of the bone structure and the number and array of teeth is an indication of domestication, okay? So starting from the early studies back in 1959 of the Novosibirsk, I didn't practice it, but that's anyway how it came out. State University in Russia. Silver foxes and breeding them for people-friendly behaviors led to their facial and body features actually changing as well. The ears got floppy, the coat became spotted, and the tails curled as the lines of foxes were bred for more and more people-friendly behaviors were exhibited. So the body types or phenotypes, as we say in biology, that we recognize as being dog-like versus wolf-like or fox-like are symptoms of domestication. And there is a scientific reason for this phenomenon as a result of an absence of a certain kind of stem cell that is found in the dog but is available in the wolf or in the wild fox. So dogs, going back to dogs and people, dogs were buried with their owners in some agricultural communities as well, not just the hunter-gatherers, as sheep and llama herding was their way of life. So dogs at that point worked with humans for survival, just like the hunter helpers, right? And how they were treated were much better than those of the first captive wolves, clearly. However, most agricultural communities throughout the globe lent to the loss of the dog as a working partner and companion to being now livestock itself or pestilence and made into meals. So we still have that going on in certain parts of the world, particularly Asia, where dogs are actually eaten as sort of a way of getting rid of vermin. So no matter how the community where the dog seemed to be a consistent companion among humans, the primary purpose of the dog was to work. So when there was a revered relationship between the dog and the human, or the wolf dog and the human, depending on the development, it was always about work. It was always about survival. It was always about following what the human wanted them to do. So this is another thing that a lot of people argue with me and trainers like me about, is that, oh, I don't want to make the dog work too hard. That's not, it needs to be happy, da da da. This is why what I just said, the whole domestication of dogs was based around work with humans. So when I say your dogs all have a work ethic, including my Chihuahua Shih Tzu mix, which is technically a toy breed and not a working breed, they have that, and they aren't happy unless they're actually working for you. And even if that work is just playing fetch, it's work. And that's their whole existence. That's why they were developed. That's why they evolved. That's why we had bred the ones we wanted to work with us. And if you don't give your dog mental stimulation and work to do, even if you're making it up, and you don't really care, like a previous dog of mine wanted to herd squirrels up the tree. I don't care about herding squirrels up the tree, but it made her feel important. So I used it as a way of rewarding her for her good behavior, and she got to do work. I didn't care, but she thought I did. So that was all that was important. You have to make your dog work for things, work for their food, work for their attention, work for their shelter, all of those things. Even though the work is just sit, stay for a second, this is their whole purpose of being, their whole self-esteem, and you're destroying it by not doing it because you're putting all the wrong features and all the wrong socialization and all the wrong definitions of what it is to be a domesticated dog. That's a Shubs move right there. So the jury's out still, and probably will be for a long time, regarding exactly how and when dogs are domesticated from an ancient wolf creature. It's very complex, obviously. But for the purpose of that dog training show with Tanya Yarbrough, the reality that domesticated dogs require a dictatorial social hierarchy, being told what to do and what not to do, and the fact that they were bred for working with and being humans, only leads me to the same conclusion about dogs. It is absolutely, positively necessary. Dominance is not about force or violence like is hyped up by some animal rights groups or modern all positive training behaviorists. Dominance has to do with how the dog was created over tens of thousands of years ago. The domestication requires your dictatorial command of the resources and requires you to have your dog work with you for you to obtain their happiness. Amen. End of story. No more BS about that stuff. You require to dominate your dog because it's domesticated. If you had a wolf, that's a little different. Although good luck with trying to keep your kitchen cabinets from being ripped off and your food being eaten when you're sleeping. So anyway, that is kind of coming to our conclusion of that dog training show for today. And as I always say, to love is to serve in the dog world. So to help your dog with their self-esteem and their work ethics, give your dog something to do every day in little ways, and in return, you will have served them well and make them happy. Talk to you next week. Bye. I just wanna be happy and